Credit Cards After Bankruptcy, which is a book by Stephen Snyder. This is Alex Wathen giving you a book review of Credit Cards After Bankruptcy. Stephen Snyder, of course, has wrote a number of good books related to bankruptcy, including his first and most famous book, Credit After Bankruptcy. He also wrote How to Get a Credit During and After Chapter 13, which I also did a separate video book review of. In addition to that, he's got some other books on various topics related to this, but I think this is by far his best book. And the reason why I think it's one of the best books, if not his best book, is this book tells you exactly how to do stuff. It's right on the money, and you can pick out the parts of the book very easily that work for you, i.e. you pick out the particular credit card that works for you. It's a really good side-by-side comparison of about 19 credit cards available to people after or during a bankruptcy. So even if you're in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you can get one. Or whether you're right after discharge or even years after discharge and maybe been a little slow with recovering your credit, then this is also a good book for you. So let's talk a little bit about credit during and after bankruptcy. Well, usually most credit cards require you to be discharged before you can get credit, and you know that certainly makes some sense. But what if you need it beforehand? Well, this book tells you which cards are available to you, and it doesn't tell you everything about the intricacies of bankruptcy and how you get credit during a bankruptcy, but generally the rule is, and it may be different in your locality, in Chapter 7 you can apply for it all you want if you're an individual in Chapter 7. If you're in Chapters 11, 12, or 13, you generally have to have the permission of your trustee, or if you don't have a trustee, like your debtor in possession in Chapter 11, if it's not in the ordinary course of business, you typically need to have permission from the judge, unless there's a standing order or local rule otherwise. But in any case, that's typically what the process is. So you may need to have permission in Chapter 13 from your trustee, and especially if you have a good business use for it or necessary use for credit, then that may be a little easier to come by than if it's for leisure use, which I wouldn't even try it. But in any case, it's a good idea to have a credit card like this, because you can reestablish your credit long before you otherwise could if you waited till your Chapter 13 would be over, and that could be 3 to 5 years. So Chapter 11, and God knows how long that can be. I mean, 5 to 10 could be longer, basically, just depending on your circumstances. And Chapter 12, it's the same as Chapter 13, up to 5 years. So you don't want to wait all that time to reestablish your credit. This is a good way to do it, to get the right cards. And this book tells you exactly what you need to do to get certain cards. There are also other sources for secured credit cards that are local that may not be in this book because they only do business locally. Some community banks may do it. They have kind of more flexible lending guidelines, or credit unions often, as much as they can cause hassles in bankruptcy, they might offer you a secured credit card even if you're in a bankruptcy, but probably they would want to wait till discharge to offer a good one. So there are certainly other options, but these are the only national, or in some cases available in a number of states. So that's why this book is so good, because most people can apply for most of these cards. Why is it important to reestablish credit? Well, the reason why it's so important is because you don't want to just have no new credit after your bankruptcy. You don't want to start off with just saying, like if you're trying to quit drinking and saying, I don't want to ever have a drink again. That may work if you're quitting drinking, but not if you're having difficulties with spending. And most of my clients, that's really not the issue. Most of them, it's financial hardship. But there are some that simply that they were not watching their credit card spending enough. And obviously those clients, it's hard to try to tell them that they need to get new credit because they were hoping to stop that cycle. And maybe one reason might be to open a card but put it in your safe deposit box. But in any case, try to keep your cards 10% utilized, maybe 15%. That way, you'll have the lowest balance to limit ratio. And this is something Steven Snyder has taught for years to consumers, how credit scoring works, where it's really the percentage utilized that matters. So if you have a low utilization rate of your revolving credit card lines, then you're going to get the most of those 35% of the FICO score points that come from that. Obviously, some of the others you have a little less control over, but those are going to help you a lot. The bankruptcy discharge, that should, if the creditors do what they're supposed to do, update the balances to zero, so at least you won't look like you're overextended again. But at some point, those credit lines will show closed or discharged in bankruptcy, so they won't count as open at some point by the credit bureaus. That's why you need new credit lines so that you have new available credit and can get that third of the points that you need to have a good FICO score. And you can start even during your bankruptcy, especially in 13. It's a really good idea to do it. There are a couple of these cards that I call no question asked cards, and basically if your check clears, they will open a card for you. They may not have the best terms, but the advantage of opening it while you're in the 13 probably outweighs that. So if you can make sure that that's okay with your judge or trustee, then that would be a good idea for you to do, and especially if you have a legitimate business use to do it. But regardless of where you are, and if you just discharged in a 7 like a lot of my clients are, and you want to start with new cards, a lot more choices are open to you. This book is very helpful because it can help you choose which one is best for you. Some of them have high annual fees. Others have limited ability to graduate to an unsecured card. And you have to kind of determine which one works best under your circumstances. Stephen does a very good job of putting everything there up front of you so you can use this book as a shopping guide for your credit cards. It's certainly worth the low cost that the book has in order to have the ability to do it. I would say it costs less than the average late or over limit fee for most credit cards. So that certainly is a good idea. It certainly is a good idea as far as your cost is concerned. I think it's Stephen's best book so far. He's very good about keeping the book relevant to the average consumer rather than the jet set crowd. And he doesn't talk about investing in real estate. He doesn't, he talks about just getting a credit card, which I think everybody should do in and or after their bankruptcy. They need to get a credit card. So I'd like to warmly endorse this book. Steven Snyder's book, Credit Cards After Bankruptcy, is a great book. I think everybody should have it. So Credit Cards After Bankruptcy by Steven Snyder. Highly recommend the book, and I hope you go out and buy it. So this is the book review of Credit After Bankruptcy. And I'm sorry, not Credit After Bankruptcy, Credit Cards After Bankruptcy. Remember, like the Volkswagen sign and drive, and then I guess they thought sign then drive. It's sort of like that. So Credit Cards After Bankruptcy is a book by Steven Snyder that I highly recommend. This is Alex Wathen, and thank you so much for listening.